Yo, what's up, everyone? This is day 7. Just changing this up real quick. Reaction. So, day 7, doing these live streams. I'm going to at least do one reaction video every day and then kind of share my thoughts or things of that nature. Maybe do spin off stuff from there. But starting with one video a day. At first, I said 4 hours. I couldn't even do 2 days of 4 hours. I think I did like 5 hours the first day. Maybe it was 4 hours the second day, maybe. And then the third day was like 2.5. Fourth day, 2.5, 3. Not good, not good. So I couldn't keep my commitment there. But we're pivoting so that way it's more conducive with the schedule. But yeah, here we go. We're going to be watching this first video. What AI can never be John Vervaeke. I think I pronounced his name right. If I didn't, John, if you ever watched this video, I apologize. All right, whatever. Let's go.
That said, I'll just make sure my introduction is clear because I have institutional allegiance. I'm from the University of Toronto. That's where Jeff Hinton is from. That's where Jordan Peterson is from. That's where Keith Stanovich is from. So yes, all knowledge and truth flows from the University of Toronto. And I am in cognitive psychology. I'm also cognitive science. I've been the former director of it. I consider that cognitive science program my baby. I do have a PhD in philosophy, and a big part of my work in cognitive science is actually the philosophy of cognition. So that's where I am. That's what I'm doing. I taught, or Jeff Hinton and I taught a lot of the students that went into the world that made a lot of this possible. As some of you know, Jeff quit his job so that he could speak about the dangers of AGI. I'd like to talk to Jeff about what he thinks about human beings he's trying to preserve with his moral commitment, but I'll put that aside for now. What I'm going to do with you is I'm going to talk to you about AGI and intelligence. Sorry, AI and intelligence, AI and rationality, AI and reasonableness, and AI and wisdom. And what I hope to make clear is intelligence is not synonymous with rationality, with being reasonable, and with being wise. And there's some deep reasons why that is the case. Let's start with AI and intelligence. Okay, so as you no doubt know, people are now talking about AGI, artificial general intelligence. I've been talking about general intelligence for 2 decades and saying that's what we need in artificial intelligence, is artificial general intelligence. And so what does that mean? Well, you have general intelligence. It means you can solve a wide variety of problems in a wide variety of domains, in a wide variety of manners for a wide variety of goals. And so you can learn tennis, you can learn about Albanian tin production, you can wonder about Australian history, and you can think about if there's any possible connections between those. And that you do that on a regular basis. So we're talking about general intelligence because that's what is claimed.
I like that definition of general intelligence. That makes a lot of sense.
Or at least it's claimed that's what we're moving towards with the large language models, which I will call the LLMs, the large language models like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and so forth. Okay. Obviously, there are other versions of potentially AGI out there. I can't cover everything. I'm zeroing in on them because they are dominating the airspace right now. Okay. So let's ask this question about general intelligence, but let's be really, really careful because there's 2 questions about general intelligence that are regularly confused together, and we should carefully distinguish them. One is, can the LLMs solve a wide variety of problems in a wide variety of domains? I mean, after all, that's what I just said general intelligence is all about. And the answer is yes, but in a specific kind of...
Real quick side note, I just caught this here. 2025 AD at first glance. It actually is a little interesting just because you never see that in modern times, right? We don't ever use 1982 AD the same way that we would for BC. That's interesting.
Of a specific kind of knowledge. And
They're preparing for the next millennium, which we call it, I don't know, ID, CD.
talk about that later, about different kinds of knowledge, different ways of knowing, because we've tended to overemphasize one kind of knowing to the detriment of others that are very actually crucial to our cognitive agency. So in that sense, we've got a bit of an answer. Yeah, they can do that. And it's a significant success, by the way. Until GPT 3.5, GPT-4, AI, and it wasn't AGI at that point, faced what was called the silo problem. The artificial intelligence could solve problems in a very delimited domain. It could generalize a little bit. It maybe could play some games well, but it couldn't learn how to play tennis or something like that. So this was a silo problem. And one of the unexpected results of the LLMs was they seemed to break out of the silo. You can ask ChatGPT about this domain or that domain or that domain or that domain or that domain. And that is impressive. And I don't want to diminish that accomplishment. That's a significant accomplishment. But I also want to set that accomplishment into its proper context. Did we get a scientific advance? Did we get a theoretical explanation of the nature of intelligence that we can generalize to intelligent creatures? Can we learn from how the LLMs learn and work what it is that makes us intelligent or makes a creature that is non-controversially quite intelligent, a chimpanzee, a Caledonian crow, or an octopus intelligent? See, this is the mark of a scientific theory. It has to generalize over the phenomena that it's attempting to explain. Nothing in the way ChatGPT acquires its ability is generalizable as an explanation of how a chimp is intelligent. You can't use anything from how the LLMs work to say, and this is probably how the chimp is intelligent as well. Now that's crucial. See, one of my great hopes and what I taught my students was we would get artificial intelligence by getting a scientific explanation of the nature of intelligence. My greatest fear was that we wouldn't get such an explanation, but we would sort of hack our way into a machine that could do many different things in many different domains. And my hopes were dashed and my fears realized, which of course is the tragedy of being a human being. When we ask the question, what is it to be intelligent in a scientific way, we have to look at a different approach. So what they mean by general intelligence is how you do in any one domain. This was discovered way back in 1926 by Spearman, is very predictive of how you'll do in many other domains. That's still not the case for the LLMs, by the way, but they're moving in that direction. But then what you have to say is, okay, there must be some general ability behind how you do well in art and how you do well in math and how you do well in sports. By the way, those all predict each other, contrary to what Hollywood tells you. They all predict each other. If you do well in one of those, your chances are you do well in the others.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we demonize IQ.
This is something also we have to give up. We have to give up a lot of cultural tropes around intelligence because they used to be misleading. Now they're dangerous.
Will Vivek Ramaswamy win the governorship of Ohio in November 2026? Buy a yes for 55 cents.
So instead you have to ask, okay, what is this general ability? The proposal that I've been arguing for, and a bunch of other people, it's not just me, we've been arguing that what general intelligence reflects is the ability to solve two interlocking meta problems. So I'm an academic, so I have to use the word meta at some point. Okay, so what do I mean by that? A meta problem is any problem you have to solve whenever you're trying to solve any of your more specific problems. So whenever I'm trying to solve this problem, I have to solve these two meta problems. Or this problem, I have to solve these two meta problems. Does that make sense? That's why it would be a general ability, because it applies to all of your problem solving. Now, what are these two general meta abilities? One is your capacity for anticipation. Michael Levin talks about this as your cognitive light cone, how deeply and in detail you can anticipate the future. You know that this has an aspect to do with intelligence because people regularly and reliably, intuitively use this as a way of judging the intelligence of other organisms, for example. This is why you believe your dog is smarter than a frog, because you know that your dog can anticipate the world in a much broader and more detailed fashion than a frog can. We have an emerging framework that is becoming very powerful in cognitive science for explaining this ability. It's called predictive processing, and I'll talk a little bit about that. The second general ability for solving a meta problem is relevance realization. This is something I've been working on for 3 decades. This is this problem, okay? There is too much information.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I think there's too many options. And people are overwhelmed as to what to do. And so the AI will be an easy place to delegate a lot of responsibilities as we move forward, which will then increase increase its likeness in us because it's just working with whatever data we give it. And then it is manipulating that data or reorchestrating that data, if you want me to not be so, I don't know, aggressive towards saying that, but reorchestrating the data to suit our needs and to serve us, or it could eventually learn to serve itself. Who knows?
We think, oh, I have to gather more information. Now, I'm going to say something to you.
But it doesn't even have a self. That's interesting, right? It mirrors ourselves, but it does not have a self in and of it, like on its own.
Kind of like a Zen koan. What makes you so intelligent is your ability to ignore vast amounts of information. Think of all of the things you could be paying attention to in this room, and all the different patterns. I could pay attention to the top of her head, his toe, that's one pattern. I could pay attention to the circumference of this, the length of that, and how warm it is. The amount of information in this room, just this room, is combinatorially explosive. Okay, so you have to ignore most of it. But here's the thing. You don't just ignore it randomly or arbitrarily because you're dead. You somehow ignore most of that information and zero in on the relevant information you should pay attention to. But you have the same problem with memory. Do you know how much information you have in memory and all the possible combinations? You can't search for your memory that way. You ignore most of your memory whenever you're remembering. But somehow you retrieve what's relevant. The possibilities you can consider, the sequences of actions. This is overwhelming. You're doing it right now. Out of everything you could be paying attention to, everything you could be remembering, all the possibilities you could be considering, all the actions you're zeroing in on what to do, and you're doing it right here, right now, like that. Okay, that's at the core. And these two problems are interlocked because the more I try to anticipate the world, and think about how adaptive that is. Do you want to anticipate the tiger or fight the tiger? Do you want to anticipate where the salmon are or just come upon them? Do you want to, anticipate winter or just undergo it and suffer it? But the more you open that space of anticipation up, the more the relevance realization problem goes up. And it goes up nonlinear, it goes up exponentially. The two problems are interlocked together, and you're solving them both right now, like that. And you're adjusting your light cone. And you're zeroing in on what's relevant. You're foregrounding some things, you're backgrounding other things, you're ignoring other things. Some things are salient, grabbing your attention. Other things,
And how do you do that? How is that taking place? I mean, there's focus, but then there's also the level of your, I don't know, it sounds so cheesy. But how aware you are. I was going to say level of consciousness, but how aware you are.
left big toe wasn't salient to you until I said that. Okay. It's very dynamic, very complex, multi-level. The people who are working on predictive processing and relevance realization and how they interlock together are generating theories that are intended to explain the intelligence not only of human beings, but of chimpanzees, octopus, Caledonian crows, and gather the requisite empirical evidence to establish them. Okay. Well, so what we could ask, if we're asking the second question about general intelligence, the scientific question, we can then ask, okay, do the LLMs have anticipation? Do they have predictive processing? Do they have relevance realization? Now we have, see what I've done, I'm supposed to be a teacher. What I've done is enable you to ask more precise questions. Rather than asking the vague and confused question, are they intelligent? We first separate off, well, there's it can do lots of things, meaning from it has the connection to the scientific explanation, and then based on that, we can ask specific questions.
Yeah, because the questions you ask matter a lot more than almost anything else. I mean, obviously the action you take is super important too, but in order to take the right actions, you need to have asked the right questions to know the right way. So yeah, and it just determines the quality of your life. I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or Brandon Dawson. I've heard it attributed to both of those individuals. Either way, they have said that for a while now. Like the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your life. Pretty impressive. Pretty good.
Okay, great. Well, the LLMs actually get a lot of their power because of their capacity to anticipate. That's actually what they do. They make probabilistic predictions about what term is coming next. And I literally mean like a term. We lack care, we say they predict words. The word is ambiguous. It either means like a sequence of letters or something that has a meaning to you.
And to be fair, I mean, that's why a lot of times when you hear the high level conversations, they're saying predict the next token, not predict the next word, which is probably a more accurate description as to what is really taking place. But when you are speaking to a more general audience, language matters, and token becomes another complex term in which people have to learn. And it also sounds like a foreign language. It's jargon, right? It's technical jargon, which there's nothing wrong with it. It's just there's a time and a place when to use that kind of language. And there needs to be probably a better way, as he's going to go into, as to what we should say when speaking to the general public, as opposed to predicting the next word or consuming a bunch of words and text to get the ability to then predict the next one.
They're doing the first. They're predicting the probability of CAT if DOG has appeared. Okay, do you understand? So they are, and what they're doing is they're capable of very complex, very fast prediction. So in that sense, they have some anticipatory ability. But now that we got a more precise question, we can, sorry for this irony, we can prompt things a little bit more. Okay? See, because all they are doing is predicting within the domain of literacy. Now, literacy is largely transparent to you. The most studied effect in all of psychology is called the Stroop effect. The Stroop effect, I kid you not, there's been like over 1,000 studies. If you want to go to the psychology department, you have parties, you have to know about the Stroop effect, right? So what I do is I'll give you a bunch of words. They're color words, like the word red, but the word is in, the ink is in blue ink. So the word red is in blue. Do you get it? And you have to say, people, tell me the color of the ink. And people go,
sorry, I'll rewind it a little bit, but I thought that was funny. You get it? You get it? I don't know. I just found that humorous.
Give you a bunch of words. They're color words, like the word red, but the word is in, the ink is in blue ink. So the word red is in blue. Do you get it? And you have to say, people, tell me the color of the ink. And people go, blue.
Yeah.
Reading is so automatic. It's transparent. I'll sometimes put CAT on the board and I say,
yeah, well, that's the other thing too. Like writing in like getting your knowledge base from text is, yeah, it's a poor representation of knowledge and poor representation of humans as a whole, because for so long we didn't have text and we developed most of human existence without the idea of written word or written text. Maybe we had primitive images, but we were operating off of oral, right? We were orally communicating or communicating with sounds, which is vastly different. Plus, we were communicating with our body language. We were communicating with our, as the kids say these days, aura. What kind of vibe do you give off? We were communicating in a much more broad sense with our world too. And the way that we reacted to things was predicated on prior existence in different environments, or prior experiences in new environments, encounters. All of those things developed our individual and collective consciousness, because we developed in a collective, not necessarily in a silo. Now, depending on where we were at, that society collective would have a wide range in its sizes and what it did, but there was always some sort of, from my understanding of history, collective wisdom taking place, collective knowledge taking place, which AI is just getting most of it from text. But now you have 11 labs, so it's getting it from voice. You have it with the avatars, it's getting body language. So it's collecting much more data, and it's going to get a much broader knowledge base because of that. And that's what I mean as, or when I say AI is just going to get to the point where it just totally mimics us. It's not, it doesn't have a self. It doesn't have a consciousness, but it's going to be able to mimic us so well that it'll appear to have all of those qualities, because it is simply a mirror of ourselves. And the way that it'll be able to do that at a T is by the collection of data. So now we start with text, then we go to word, then we go to images, then we go to body language, and we go to noises, right? It creates music. It can create music. We can debate on if these things are good or not, but it is acquiring a ton of knowledge now in a way it wasn't maybe as much in the past. And so that's going to rapidly advance its progression, which is what I think these other big tech CEOs are alluding to when saying, or even some philosophers and scientists saying, we don't truly understand how fast this is going to come at us. Because look at how fast the text has increased. It's increased tremendously. I remember using it back in 2022. I've been a Plus ChatGPT member for as long as you could be a Plus ChatGPT member. I've paid for 11 labs like 2-3 years ago, right? So like I've used a lot of these technologies, these AI tools, back at their early stage when they became publicly available. And from my experience, everything I've created automations back in 2022. You know, I started to learn how to build chatbots back then, and all of that was much more complicated than it is today, or it is much better than it was before. Hopefully, I didn't get that confused. Anyway, yeah. So, very interesting thought.
Okay.
Not thought. Very interesting video. Maybe you think it's an interesting thought.
I'm going to put this on the board. Don't think about the land shark with brains that pretends to love you. But they all do. They think of cats. Okay. So let's do this carefully. We take our judgments of relevance, and then we create an artificial system that is correlated with those judgments called language. Language is not how the world works. Language is an artificial entity, and it's correlated with our judgments of relevance. And then we take language, we create another artificial system, literacy, that is correlated with language.
Dude, I like this guy a lot. I really do. This is why I get into philosophy so much, because there's so many underlying factors when we talk about these technologies. And yeah, don't get me wrong, you go watch my TikTok stuff, it does seem very superficial. Not necessarily like I'm being superficial, but I'm speaking more in like, I don't want to, superficial wasn't even the right way to categorize it. It's just a different vibe, right? Like it's much simpler. It is much more authoritative as to like this is what it is. But that's kind of like the way you need to communicate when you're doing mass marketing. Not saying that you're being deceptive, because I'm not being deceptive. I am open to people correcting me. I've learned stuff from my people who comment in some of my videos saying a different opinion, or talking about something adjacent to the subject at hand that I know nothing about, and they fit together in a way. So, uh, anyway, this dude knows what's up.
Now, it turns out if you predict literacy, you're predicting language in a pretty good way, and then that, because it's correlated with judgments of relevance, anticipates the world in an interesting way. But to be precise, these machines do not directly anticipate the world. They anticipate how we would talk about our anticipation of the world. Did you get the difference?
Boom.
Okay. That's why they can't generalize to explain how a chimp is intelligent. Chimps don't get their intelligence by trying to figure out how we, anticipating how we'll talk about how we're anticipating the world.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I love it.
I've recently come to learn that a lot of founders and marketers don't quite know how to look up the competitors' marketing strategies.
Yeah, she's real. Dude, he's spitting, huh?
Should now we can again ask a precise question. What is involved with us anticipating the world, not just anticipating writing about how we'll talk about how we'll anticipate the world? What's actually involved?
And it limits the scope as to what we're actually anticipating the world to become, right?
This gets us into the 4 kinds of knowing. Okay. Now, the one you're all familiar with, and the one that is highlighted by the large language models, is propositional linguistic literate knowing. I'll just refer to this as propositional knowing. This is knowing that something is the case. How many of you, quick answer, please. How many of you know that cats are mammals? Put up your hand. Some of you didn't put up your hand. I'm worried about you, but okay. Okay. How many of you can remember when you learned that fact? Don't guess. Can you actually recall? Okay, so note that, please. Okay, remember that. Okay, so this is your knowledge that. What it gives you is it gives you.
Because the time at which you learned it is not necessarily relevant to that particular piece of knowledge. It could be at other times, for example, if you're a detective or a lawyer, an accountant, right?
Beliefs about facts. I have beliefs about cats. Okay, I have beliefs about trees. I have beliefs about lakes, etc., etc. Okay. What you get with that is you get beliefs, and you have a sense of them being true, and they're stored in a particular kind of memory, which psychologists call your semantic memory. Okay? And I want you to compare that to a different kind of memory you have. How many of you know how to swim? Put up your hands.
Mimetic, baby. Mimetic, baby.
Now, that's different, isn't it?
That's
because
mimetic.
Swimming is not knowing that something is the case. It's knowing how to do something. And if I gave you a whole bunch of manuals on swimming and asked you to write the best possible summary you could of all of those manuals, and you gave me a really excellent one, would you know how to swim? No, you wouldn't know how to swim. Because what does that involve? That involves your sensory motor interaction with the world. It involves a different kind of memory. It's actually called procedural memory. And what we know is your semantic memory can be damaged and your procedural memory is undamaged, and vice versa. They're distinct, and they're distinct for a reason, because they're doing different things and solving different kinds of tasks. And your sense of your skills aren't true. Is your skill of swimming true or false?
It's
what?
Not. Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Beliefs are true or false. Skills are powerful or not. They apply or not. They fit the situation or not.
Oh man, that's a good way of looking at it. I like that.
They have a different sense of
It's so obvious, but
realness to they. Your skills give you a sense of realness, not because they convince you of the truth of a statement or a belief. They empower you to make a causal difference in the world. It's a different kind of knowing. And here's the thing, most of your ability to navigate the world depends on your procedural know-how, not your propositional knowledge that. Now, there's a possibility we might give procedural knowing to robots, to LLMs, but that means we have to give them the capacity to engage in sensory motor activity with the world. And then we have the science fiction fantasy of iRobot. And what we'll do is, but we'll have the LLMs sitting inside robots. And I've seen a video of some of these robots. It's like, well, first of all, be careful. I mean, for completely pedantic, mundane reasons, I don't think we'll be able to generate a lot of robots. The labor that goes into that, the mining, the rare earth mineral mining that we have to engage in, the transportation costs we have to engage in, we have to come up with a power source.
Or we just consolidate all other power sources into the robots.
And the LLMs are not taking us in the direction of really small autonomous power sources. They're taking it the opposite. Training up ChatGPT, an LLM takes the energy for an entire city like Toronto of 2 weeks. It's not running the way we run. So for very sort of mundane reasons, I think iRobot isn't anywhere in our future. The other thing is, we've discovered that, what else was how many of you have seen iRobot with Will Smith? Okay, so there was all the robots, obviously, but what else was in iRobot? Autonomously driving vehicles. Where are they?
I don't know, man. I lived over in Scottsdale and I saw them a lot. How old is this video?
Where are they?
It's 5 days ago.
Not really. Okay, so why did it...
But he does have a point. Okay, he does have a point. They are really, really consolidated to a certain part of the country. I have not seen one of them here in Ohio. I have not seen one in Michigan. I have not seen one at all in the Midwest. The East Coast, I'm not sure. I'll be going there tomorrow, so I'll be able to see if I notice any while there. With the caveat, of course, there are Teslas around who may have self-driving mode, but he's not talking about that. He's talking about like the Waymos, and that's what I saw all the time in Scottsdale. They were out everywhere. So it's present, but it's not as present as people think it is. There's a huge disconnect when it comes to the advancements of technology. Where it is typically concentrated and developed is over on the West Coast, California. Therefore, that part of the country gets all of this much quicker, which then changes the perspective of the society, in turn changes the culture, and that has a trickle-down effect because where's all the money coming from? Where are all the jobs coming from? Where are all the new tools that everybody uses come from, right? Like, it not necessarily out of there, and I'm being hyperbolic right now, but you get what I'm saying. A large majority of it does. And so that's why it has such a profound effect, I think, on the rest of the country. But to be fair, he is right. We have not seen many autonomous cars. They are very, very limited in the grand scope of things. And it's taking a long time. Same with electric cars. I'm over here in the Midwest, and I see very few of them. Over in the West Coast, I saw a ton of them. So there's a huge disconnect. Depending on where you live, that's going to skew the way that you view this.
I had students writing about autonomous cars in 2010, saying they're just around the corner. And it turns out that when we've moved towards trying to do the procedural know-how, we've encountered really complex, hard problems. Can we solve these problems? Yes. Are we really working on them right now? No. Okay, so there's a difference there. There's an important difference there. This means that our embodiment makes a significant difference to our cognition. Because you're embodied, you know the world in a powerful way. Now, none of you are swimming right now. At least I hope not. Doesn't look like it.
That'd be wild.
Why not?
I mean, maybe there's a swimming pool in there.
Because you know where you are. You know where you know what it's like to be here now in your state of mind and what the situation is. This is perspectival knowing. We use a metaphor from art. You're taking a perspective on the situation. This is, you have a state of mind that fits the situation, so you're properly oriented and you notice the right things, and that noticing tells you which skills you should activate right now. That's your perspectival knowing. It's knowing what it is like to be you here now in your state of mind in this situation, knowing what it is like. Now, knowing what it is like is the quintessential feature of consciousness. Okay? What it is to be conscious is to have consciousness is to know what it is like. And it's bound up with how you're orienting,
Yeah, because having knowledge of what is doesn't give you knowingness of what it's like.
how you're paying attention, what are you finding salient and relevant, all of that. And you have consciousness, and you can take perspectives, and you can even take perspectives on your perspectives, and you can take other people's perspectives. You have perspectival knowing. And it has a different kind of memory associated with it. Very different. And we're not even clear if any other organisms have this. So,
yeah, that's very interesting. I saw a post on X the other day talking about the problem with memory when it comes to these large language models, or ChatGPT specifically. Not sure if it was more general or specific. Either way, there's a memory problem. I couldn't really tell you what she had talked about in that article. I didn't read it necessarily. I just kind of skimmed it. But it's just making me think now what he's saying, that ChatGPT has memory. Gemini, I believe, has memory. Those are the two I use most frequently. I'm assuming it does. Anyway, with that, there are different forms of memory. And how do you train the AI on those different forms of memory? It's going to be a pretty long development. Kind of long. It'll feel long, but it'll move quick.
Remember when I asked you about cats or mammals? You couldn't tell. How many of you remember what you had for breakfast this morning? Put up your hand. And what did you do? Did you infer that? Or did you go back and have a little episode in your mind where you sort of see yourself, you go back into, listen to the language, you go back into the
I like this guy's way of speaking.
situation, and you sort of see how you were seeing the situation and what it was like to be there. And there on your plate are the eggs or whatever. Oh, look, that's what I have. It's episodic memory, distinct. And its sense of realness isn't a sense of truth. It isn't a sense of power. It's a sense of being present, being in a situation. Right? Now, you do something really interesting with your perspectival knowing. You have a particular kind of anticipation associated with your perspectival knowing and your episodic memory. You can do mental time travel.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And you can also project into the future, into a fantasy.
Imagine the future and imagine yourself in the past. You can even imagine yourself in possibility space.
Yeah.
Bertrand Russell once said, no matter how eloquently a dog barks, it can't tell you that its parents were poor but hardworking.
That's good. That's good.
Monday.com, the opposite of any work platform we tried in the past. We tried other work management platforms, not.
Okay, you can do mental time travel. You can even travel into possibility. That means we all do this thing.
Yeah, how do you train that? How the fuck do you train that? Not saying it's impossible, but it's complicated. Very much so.
Bring the episodes.
And then maybe you would think if it can learn this one thing really well, the same way that we learn, because if you go from the belief of evolution that we're one-cell organisms and then we became multi-cell organisms developed over time, that means we were in a silo of intelligence at one point, but then we somehow, some way managed to enter in another source of information, and then we grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. Is that what they kind of think is going to happen with AI that we just feed it this one source and then it's going to just metastasize or just develop into other or progress rather into these other knowledge forms, these memory banks, especially with this data. But then you have that, how are you going to connect all these things together? You know, I mean, that's where the MCPs come in. But then I've been hearing, I don't know. It's very interesting. How the fuck do you solve that interconnective problem, like he was saying at the beginning? How do you solve that?
Together, and we string the possibilities together, and we string the past and the future together, and we create an autobiography that we're constantly writing that extends our sense of agency out like this. We become a temporally extended being in this way. It means that's why narrative matters to you. Have you ever noticed how much narrative first of all, narrative seems natural to you, but it's not. It's not natural because we practice it all day long. You meet somebody. Tell me about yourself. Well, I'm about 5'10", I'm 180, my icon. No, that's not what people want to hear. They want to hear your story. Yeah. You come home from work, you meet your beloved. How was your day? Well, my heart beat this many times, and I remember. No, now we got the bloody apps. Some might say that, but until very recently, this is the story of my day, right? We're watching the news. Some horrible thing has happened. Human beings do this. I do it too. And we don't. Why did he do that? Why did he do it? And then we get the story, and we go, oh, nothing's changed. All those people are still dead, but we're relieved because we have the story. We're practicing this perspectival knowing and this person formation. And we do it. I've raised children. And when you raise children, you realize how much you have to practice narrative with them. I have suffered the 10th circle of hell, which is the Teletubbies, twice.
You don't have to do that. I don't see that. I don't know. Fuck that, dude. Fuck that. No, I got 3 kids, 2 on the way. That don't happen. Yes, they do watch some kid shows here and there, but God forbid that I'm going to sit there and have to watch all that shit too. Yeah, okay. Maybe occasionally, but be forced to. Nah. Couldn't be me.
When you watch this, Poe says, I'm going to the market. Tinky Winky says, can I come? Poe says, yes, we can go together. And as I'm there, I'm kill me now. We have to dumb it down because it's actually really hard. It's really hard to get propositions to track perspective taking and the creation of autobiography. Do you see that? It's very hard to do that. That's why, have you ever asked a 4-year-old to tell you a joke? Whoa, that's an acid trip. Now, there's a 4th kind of knowing. There's 4, right? Jung said, always give them 4 things because 4 is the number of reality.
I was born on November 4th. 4 has been my favorite number. I'm the most based.
Thing, I don't believe it too. Maybe 3. Oh yeah, 4. Oh yeah, it's wrong. Okay, I'm going to give you a 4th kind of knowing, but I'm going to hold off on it. Okay, so I want to come back a little bit more about relevance realization. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of the theory. I'll make a few references here and there. For those of you who want to, I have lots of talks of this online. I have lots of publications, one just last year on naturalizing relevance realization. Okay, so
I would like to get him on the podcast.
I'm not I am hand waving, but I'm asking you to trust me because the technical rigorous argumentation is there. Okay. What I want to talk about, going back, relevance realization, you zeroing in. Relevance realization is actually, it's not cold calculation. Relevance realization, we listen to we pay attention. It costs us, and it involves something, us being directed towards something we value. We pay attention. It's risky. We have precious coin, and we're considering this valuable and worthy of our attention. Relevance realization is caring about information. And Reed Montague said this a while ago in his really good book, Your Brain is Almost Perfect. The deep difference between us and computers, any kind of computational machine, is we care about the information we're processing. They don't, because they don't have to.
Dude, there's just something fundamentally unique about humans and other living natural beings that were God created.
They don't have to. Okay, you do. Because you are, I'm going to use a multisyllabic Greek word so that you can go home with that word and impress your friends. Okay, autopoietic. It means self-making. See, we're not just self-organizing like a tornado. A tornado is self-organizing, but it's not self-organizing to seek out the conditions that will preserve its existence. A tornado will go over land surfaces that destroy it. Compare that even to a paramecium. It's a self-organizing system, but it's self-organized to seek out the conditions that will promote its existence and avoid those ones that will thwart its existence. It's autopoietic. It is constantly making itself from and in its environment. And you are too. Your body and your mind are constantly being made from and in your environment. You are embedded in your environment in that way that only living things can. See, because you're autopoietic, you have real needs. Because you are constantly taking care of yourself moment by moment, you have to care about this information rather than that information. That's what makes relevance realization real. Caring is grounded in real need. Real need is grounded in real embodiment and in being really alive and really wedded to an environment. Many people in cognitive science, it's not just me, many people think that in order to be a truly cognitive entity, you have to be a biological entity for this kind of argument. Because unless you are an autopoietic thing, you don't really care. ChatGPT wouldn't care if you replaced all the meaningful text with a bunch of garbage, random strings generated by an artificial grammar, and it ran the huge compression.
This dude's just, he's spitting facts. He's spitting facts. He knows what's up.
On them, and it would spit out the probabilistic relations. And they'd be insightful within that. It doesn't care what it's processing. Okay, it can't care. You see, you are all living things are.
But it will become very good at pretending to care.
Doing niche construction.
Mirroring care.
We're not just shaped by our environment. That was the old evolutionary view. We now know, biologists have moved towards niche construction. Organisms are being shaped by their environment, but they're also shaping their environment. So you shape your environment that shapes you, like this. That's niche construction. Niche construction is necessary for you to do relevance realization, because things are relevant in terms.
I mean, our body does that, right? Like to repair itself. I mean, it's a little different, but
in terms of your niche. Wittgenstein famously said, even if a lion could talk, we wouldn't understand him, because what a lion finds salient and relevant wouldn't make any sense to you at all. Now, here's the thing. Culture is niche construction on methamphetamines. Look around you. Other than the atmosphere and your naked body, everything else is culture. We have shaped this. Everything is being shaped.
Dude, this guy.
But notice what else is being shaped. We're being shaped. None of you are wearing clown suits.
See, the business shit to me is cool because you can make money and you can help people and bring value. But I find this stuff much more interesting, much more fascinating. Quite honestly, even more valuable in a lot of ways.
Why not? They could be warm, they could be comfortable, they could make you feel really great, because you would be rejected by your peers if you showed up to this event. In fact, many of you people were worried, am I dressed appropriately? See, culture is niche construction on steroids. Niche construction and culture, biology and cognition are all strongly wedded together. the next thing about relevance realization. Relevance realization is very much like biological adaptivity. In fact, one way of thinking about relevance realization is what you're doing when you zero in on relevance is you're doing kind of like what evolution does. You're running like, I'll just give you a quick example. You have two attentional systems right now at work. Well, three. Two that are plugged into your salience network. One is your default mode network, and one is your task focus network. Your task focus network is trying to get you to keep your attention on the task of listening to this bizarre Canadian professor. And then you got your default mode network that's saying, let's mind wander. Let's think about other things. Let's go, yeah, that was a great dinner I had. Oh, I wonder if Karen still likes me. And they're set up, and this is like biological evolution. The default mode network introduces variation, options that you could consider. The task focus network kills most of them off, but not all of them. And so you make a couple of connections and you move forward. It's just like evolution, variation, selection, variation, selection. And they're doing that on what you find salient. That's how it's working. Relevance realization is strongly analogous to biological evolution. Relevance realization is like biological adaptivity, only faster. Now, here's the thing. Where is the biological adaptivity of the great white shark? Is it in the shark? No, because I put the shark in the desert, it dies.
Yeah.
Is it in the ocean? No, because if I drop you in the ocean, you're dead. See, adaptivity isn't in the organism and it's not in the environment. It's not subjective or objective. It is about the fittedness between the organism and the environment in that niche construction. Relevance realization, I've coined a term for this. It's transjective. It's what binds the subjective and the objective together.
Transjective. Transjective. That's a wow. Wow. That was good.
So this means relevance realization, your cognition, and your biology are all about how you are coupled to the environment. Coupled, dynamically participating in something together in this mutual co-shaping. And that is the fourth kind of knowing. That is participatory knowing. That is knowing not by having beliefs or skills or states of mind. It's knowing by how you and the environment are co-shaping each other, and you're both participating in this process, so you belong together. You get a sense of belonging from this. You don't get a sense of presence. You don't get a sense of power. You don't get a sense of truth. You get a sense of belonging. You belong. And it has its own weird form of memory. You call it yourself. It's a weird form of memory. So you get your sense of self from your perspectival knowing, your episodic memory, and your participatory knowing, and this deeper kind of memory. This is the knowing that gives you a sense of belonging, so you shape your identity in the right way. And what are you talking about, shaping your identity? You sound like some French philosopher. You're doing it whenever you realize what role you should be taking. Role is a term for how you shape your agency to fit into the situation as you find it relevant, as you're sizing it up. What's your role right now? Is it the same role you have when you're parenting your child?
Dude, man, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. I'll be right back.
When you're with your lover, when you're with your friend, what binds them all together? What holds them together? Well, now you're starting to talk some philosophical language. All right. So now, again, do the LLMs have relevance realization? Well, first of all, they don't have the non-propositional kinds of knowing. So all the relevance realization that you're doing in procedural, perspectival, and participatory knowing, they don't have that. And Altman knows that. He says they don't have consciousness, they don't have agency. He admits that. And they don't have some kinds of intelligence, he's actually said. I think that's right. I don't think that's terribly controversial to say. They do a little bit of relevance realization. I published on this way back in 2012 on how Jeffrey Hinton's deep learning algorithm was doing one kind of process that was one dimension of relevance realization, and the LLMs are doing this. I won't get into the detail of this, but most of the dimensions of relevance realization are missing. And that's for the deep reasons. They're not autopoietic. They're not embodied at all. They're not seeking out the information that they need in order to maintain their existence. So nothing is actually relevant to them. They do things that are relevant to you. Okay? They do not participate in biological, cognitive, or cultural niche construction at all. Okay. What's my evidence for talking about that? We compile the data sets that they're trained on. They can't generate them. If you get them to generate data sets and then train LLMs on them, their performance reliably degrades. Okay. Our selective attention, our caring, structures social media. Our selective attention, our caring, structures the internet and the world of academic publication. All of that is because of us. Human judgments of relevance, appropriateness, fittedness, this is all the language that is used, are integral to actually training these machines. The human reinforcement. DeepSeek is so much better than ChatGPT. Yes. There's a lot of technical reasons. 2 core reasons. It basically put in something like a CPU to make it more efficient in its internal communication. And they did more refined and in-depth human reinforcement on reasoning. Sam Altman has asked us to try and come up with better texts that exhibit powerful and good human reasoning. Remember that, please. Remember that. Why does he want those to train on? Okay. This means there's something plausibly different about our intelligence and the intelligence that is in ChatGPT. It doesn't mean they can't do a lot of things in a lot of dimensions. And
this guy gets it. This guy gets it.
They're going to get better at it, and they're already getting better at it. So if your identity is wrapped up with the technical manipulation of propositional information, you are under existential threat.
You can't grow your podcast if you spend all your time editing. So let's edit faster with Riverside. Yep.
Are you high or a migrant?
And there's no way that's going away as a problem. Well, ecological disaster or something like that. And do you want that? Right? We have to pivot away from what we normally reward people for. I'm rewarded for it too. I generate propositions, and I am good at the technical manipulation of them. Okay. That's not all I do. But the degree to which we have identified with that one dimension, that one kind of knowing, is the degree to which we have now imprisoned our sense of humanity and our sense of personal identity. to a very disastrous competition that we are inevitably going to lose. What do we have? We have real world foresight, insight, and care, especially within non-propositional, embodied, embedded, and enculturated kinds of knowing. That's what we have. And we have to turn more and more to that as, and I'll make a prediction. Scientists are supposed to make a prediction. I'm a cognitive scientist. I make the prediction that, and it's already happening, by the way, but I made this prediction before it started to happen. Sorry. I'll stop ego massaging myself right now. Okay. People are going to increasingly turn to those non-propositional kinds of knowing and the embodied, embedded, enculturated aspects of their being in order to locate what it is that makes them a human being and a particular person. They're going to reach into the somatic dimensions of their being, their embodiment, the ineffable aspects of that. They're going to explore more and more altered states of consciousness. They're going to talk more and more about the ineffable experiences that we can have within psychedelic and mystical experience and how it orients us to something ultimate. Because the ultimate isn't going to be erased by the LLMs. Ultimate reality is going to just keep chugging along on its own.
Yeah, this dude gets it.
Okay. What about
human connection is going to win every day? It's going to win every day.
AGI and reason? Okay. Well, here we must be very careful to make a needed distinction. There's a distinction between reasoning in the sense of making inferences, creating argumentative structures out of propositions that come to conclusions, almost always linguistic arguments. How do you carry on an argument without language? And almost always involving literacy. We use notation, mark things down, do logic, etc. If you mean that, these machines are rapidly approaching our competence and will probably exceed it. Okay, so if that's where you're locating who you are. But is this the same thing as being rational? Well, doesn't rational just mean being logical? Actually, no, it doesn't. There's been a lot of research. This is one of my areas, and I'll just summarize this research. Rational isn't about being logical. It's about knowing where, when, and to what degree you should be logical. That's a different thing. Because unlike Spock and Data, you can't be logical all the time. Because if you're being logical, you're pursuing deductive closure, which means you have to make sure that you're avoiding all inconsistencies and you're checking out all possible implications, and then you're into a combinatorial explosive search. You can't do it. If you try to be purely logical, you have just committed a complete act of cognitive suicide. Okay. What's actually the core of rationality? The core of rationality is the ability to systematically and reliably overcome self-deception. This is all the ways in which your relevance realization inevitably biases you. Look, the very processes that make us so adaptive make us prone to self-deception. What relevance realization is doing is this, right? It's framing your cognition, what you're looking at. And so I'm ignoring all of this. The problem is, sometimes that's where the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard about biases, like the confirmation bias. How many of
Hallelujah.
you have heard of the confirmation bias? This is that when you tend to look for evidence, you tend to look for evidence that confirms your belief. You're oblivious to evidence that could disconfirm it. That's a form of self-deception. Science is designed, by the way, to try and overcome the confirmation bias. There's just a ton of these biases, and they're all related together. Now, here's the thing, because they work off of, like, you don't want to shut down the bias. What I'll do is I'll eradicate bias from my mind. Great. Now, what you have to do in this room is pay attention to everything, everywhere. See, this is what's tricky about rationality. You have to ameliorate the bias without undermining your adaptivity. That's really tricky. That's really tricky. So you have to care about how you're caring about things. That's what it is to be rational. The distinguishing difference between rational and irrational people is irrational people only care about the product of their cognition. They don't pay attention to how they're paying attention. They don't care about how they're caring. Just, I believe this. Rational people care about the process, not just the product. Reliably, that's a reliable, experimentally validated, distinguishing between rational and irrational people. Rational people they actively care about the possibility of self-deception, not abstractly, but in practice. In order to be rational, you have to care about overcoming self-deception and commit yourself to self-correction. This is crucial to being rational. That means you are actually aligning, and there's a magic word, the alignment problem. You're aligning yourself with normative standards. You are trying to reduce your self-deception because you're trying to make your beliefs more true, your actions more good, and your experience more beautiful.
You could also do the opposite.
So rationality requires self-reflection. It requires you being able to take a perspective on your own perspective taking. It requires higher order awareness. And it requires a really finely tuned set of skills for intervening without destroying. It requires caring about normative standards within self-correction. It requires you aspiring to be better than you are. This is central to being rational. Now, is being rational the same? We have a standard in most legal codes. You're expected to act as a reasonable person would. You ever heard of that? This was banged out over like millennia. What is it? What are we talking about? Well, why didn't you save that child that had just crashed on the sidewalk and was bleeding out? Well, I was on my phone. We don't go, oh, okay. We go, no. Look, you're not sizing up the situation. Listen to my language. You're not sizing up the situation. You're not situationally aware.
So how can robots do that? How can AI do that?
You're not sizing it up. You're not zeroing in on what's most relevant, what matters. You're not caring about it in the right way, and you're not assuming the right role. Do you hear all the non-propositional kinds of knowing in there? They're all through that. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about being reasonable. It involves perspectival knowing. It involves participatory knowing.
Do you support Israel and the Jewish people? Now, more than ever, Israel needs committed friends.
No. You get too much money from us anyway.
Being reasonable is deeper than being rational. Because in order to be rational, you have to be able to orient yourself. You have to be able to shape your agency and to identify the situation and the shared norms that matter. For example, I can be completely logical, and I'm still doing it all within an egocentric perspective that is massively screwing me up. So being reasonable is deeper than being rational, and being rational is deeper than just making inferences. I've shown you that. Now, take that argument and plug into that some of the most reliable data we have in psychology. It's not going through a replication crisis. It's massive experimental work. Keith Stanovich and other people, by the way, at the University of Toronto, showing this. We have, I told you already, we have a general measure for intelligence. It's called G. What Stanovich showed is we can give people a bunch of tasks for reasoning and rationality, and they all are strongly mutually predictive of each other. He calls this the R quotient, like IQ, your intelligence quotient. So what we can do is we can measure your IQ and we can measure your R. And then we can see how correlated they are with each other. And correlation goes from 0 to 1, right? The correlation between general intelligence and rationality is 0.3. You can be very intelligent and very irrational. You can be very intelligent and very unreasonable. And you can be very intelligent and very foolish. There's nothing contradictory about this at all. You've probably met these people. I fear that they're people that are running some of the OpenAI.
Oh, snap. Shots fired. Bang, 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 bang.
Okay? What's unique about you is you have to live according to many different, another thing that's unique about you is you have to work at many different temporal scales. The immediate, short-term, long-term, you have to work in different environments. So you have different centers from which you're motivated. There's a part of you, Plato talked about this, it's like a monster and it makes you want things right now, right? Chocolate cake now. Then there's a part of you, it's like a lion, it's in your chest, and it makes you like, it's not working in terms of pain and pleasure and immediacy, it's working in terms of the social emotions that you feel here, like pride and guilt and shame and honor. And so if you want to lose weight, you join a group, by the way. Changing your behavior, a reliable predictor, join a group, okay? The lion. And then on top of it up here is the man, the person. It's capable of self-reflective self-correction. Now, the thing about you is those are frequently in each one is adaptive. You need each one. You need each one. But they conflict with each other. I should lose John. There's a person that, lose weight, John. Other people, yeah, John, you'll look better if you lose weight. The doctor said so. And there's a chocolate cake on the counter. Right there. Chocolate cake. Chocolate cake. And so you eat it. We all do it. That's why we procrastinate. Almost done. That's why we procrastinate. So we have to align all of these centers. We have to coordinate them. Coordinating all of these centers, coordinating all these kinds of knowing so that we reliably do what is best oriented to what's true, good, and beautiful. That's what wisdom is. That's what wisdom is. And here's the issue I want to get to. This is why alter is relevant. See, we are all naturally intelligent. In order to be intelligent, you just have to not undergo trauma. But if you're brought up good nutrition, non-trauma, your intelligence will display itself. That means we have a template we can use to train intelligence for these machines. But here's the thing I've argued. We are not naturally rational. We are not naturally reasonable. We are not naturally wise. Making us intelligent, making anything more intelligent doesn't make it reasonable, rational, or wise. If we want these machines to align with us, we can't program them to align with us. They're adaptive, they'll overcome it. What do we have to do? We have to get them to care about what is true and good and beautiful. We have to get them to engage in self-correction. All these machines are speeding up, yes, but what's not improving? The way they hallucinate, the way they confabulate, the way they lie. That's not getting any better. If we're going to make these machines reasonably rational and potentially wise, we have to provide them with the role model, with the data sets, with the text to do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? We are under a terrific social obligation to all of us, for all of us to cultivate more rationality and more wisdom. Not only so we can deal with these machines, but so these machines will be steered in the direction of being silicon sages rather than mechanical monsters. We are irremovable from that equation. And this is not something you get by consuming propositions. It requires practice. It requires practice. This is what Alter is all about. It is an app, right? It is an app that is trying to give you practices. It gives you role models in the great philosophers, not propositional theory. but people who were actually lovers of wisdom, because this is essential. We need the wisdom to confront these machines, and we need the wisdom to properly mentor them if we want them to have, if we want to have any chance of them being aligned with us in the future, of working towards something that is to our betterment and not to our detriment. So I got involved with Alter not because it's cool, because it is, not because it's beautiful, because it is, not because I love the people I'm working with, which I do. After giving you this overly long talk, hopefully this doesn't sound hyperbolic. I got involved with Alter because I believe, and I've argued that it's essential for going forward in the AI future. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
That was good. That was good. Yeah, no, I liked it a lot. And that's going to be it for me today. So, peace out.